Distinct characteristics, elements and principles of arts during the different periods. Prehistoric era. Paintings were found inside the caves and believed to be their way of communicating each other. It may also be for religious or for ceremonial purposes, and more of an artifact of the archaeological evidence than a true picture of humans' first created art. Prehistoric drawing showed animals that were usually correct in proportion. Sculptures were believed to be a product or result of natural erosion, and not of human artistry according to archaeologists. Materials used in sculptures vary according to region and locality, while carving may have mythological or religious significance. Architectures from the early age developed a form based on megaliths, big rock from the Greek word lithos, a stone, and megas, a big. Although these structures that survived from prehistory might not be what we would normally think of as architecture, but these buildings still inspire awe today, through the mysteries of their meaning, the intricacy or scale of their design, or the ingenuity of their construction. Ancient Egypt. Paintings were believed to make the deceased life place pleasant giving. Importance of life after death, and the preservation of the knowledge of the past. Most paintings were stylized, symbolic, and shows profile view of an animal or a person with themes that included the journey of the deceased gods to the underworld. The main colors used in this period were red, black, blue, gold and green, derived from mineral pigments that can withstand strong sunlight without fading. Sculptures were believed to have symbolic elements such as forms. Hieroglyphics, relative size, location, materials, color, actions and gestures were widely used. Their tombs required the most extensive use of sculpture. Characteristics includes symbolism to represent the gods where composite creature with animal heads on human body. Relief compositions were arranged in horizontal lines to record an event or represent an action. Most of the time the gods were shown larger than humans. The kings are larger than the followers, and the dead larger than the living. Empty spaces were filled with figures or hieroglyphics, and all individual components were all brought to the plane of representation, and laid out. Like writing. Architectures were developed during the pre-dynastic period of 4000 BC. Characteristics of Egyptian architecture includes thick sloping walls with few openings to obtain stability. Exterior and interior walls along with the columns and piers were covered with hieroglyphics and pictorial frescoes with carvings painted in brilliant colors. Ornamentations were symbolic like scarab, sacred beetle, solar disk, vulture and common motifs such as palm leaves, buds, lotus flower and papyrus plants, and temples were aligned with astronomically significant events with precise measurements like solstices. Sun appears to stand still on the first day of winter, and equinox a time or date when day and night are of equal length. Classical Greek. Paintings during this period were most commonly found in vases, panels and tomb. They depict natural figures with dynamic compositions and reveal a grasp of linear perspective and naturalistic representation. Most of the subjects were battle scenes, mythological figures, and everyday scenes. Most common methods of Greek painting are fresco or water-based painting, and encaustic or wax-based painting. Sculptures were tensed and stiff, and their bodies were hidden within enfolding robes or draping during the early times, but it had finally evolved and showed all the points of human anatomy and proportion after 3 centuries of experiments. Architectures showed temples consisting of a central shrine or room in an aisle surrounded by rows and columns. These buildings were designed in one of 3 architectural style or orders: Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. Roman era. Paintings were mostly copied or imitated from Hellenic Greek paintings. Fresco technique was used in brightly colored backgrounds, division of the wall into a multiple rectangular areas, a tic-tac-toe design, and multipoint perspective, as well as a tropmeloidal effect. Roman painting have a wide variety of subjects including animals, everyday life, still life, mythological subjects, portraits, and landscapes. Main innovation of Roman painting from Greek painting. Sculptures were made of monumental terracotta. They did not attempt to compete with the freestanding Greek works of history and mythology, but rather produced reliefs in the great Roman triumphal columns with continuous narrative reliefs around. Architectures from this era were sturdy stone structures both for use and to perpetuate their glory. The emperors erected huge halls and arenas for public games, baths and procession with gigantic arches of stones, bricks and concrete, or with barrel vaults. Byzantine period. Paintings were lively styles which had been invented in Greek and Rome, but this time for Christian subjects. By the 11th century, the Greek and Oriental styles seemed to blend together in splendid, imposing images which ornamented the churches in large and small forms. Sculptures were religious, everyday life scenes and motifs from nature. Animals were used as symbols such as doves, deer, and peafowl, while some had acrostic signs that contained a great theological intent or significance. Architectures from this period had a lot in common with the early Christian architecture, where mosaic decoration was perfected, as was the use of clerestory to bring light in from high windows. Byzantine's advancement in developing the dome created a new style in global architecture. Romanesque era. Paintings have remarkable variety of artistic traditions where largely placed mosaics on the walls of the churches that follow a strict frontal pose with modeling and treatment of faces that follow Byzantine convention, while the refreshingly decorative feeling came from southern French styles. It showed Mozarabic influence, Arabia's influence, through elongated oval faces, large staring and fierce eyes, long noses, and figures against flat-colored bands with heavy outlining. Sculptures were pieces of reliquaries, altar frontals, crucifixes, and devotional images. Small individual works of art were generally made of costly materials for royal and aristocratic patrons. Lightweight devotional images were usually carried during processions both inside and outside the churches. Architectures from this period showed doorways of Romanesque churches that were often grand sculpted portals or door openings. Wood or metal doors were surrounded by elaborate stone sculptures arranged in zones to fit architectural elements. Many castles were built during this period, but were greatly outnumbered by the churches. Romanesque style in England was traditionally referred to as Norman architecture. Gothic era. Paintings have been confined in the illumination of manuscript pages, and the paintings of frescoes on the walls of the churches were of cosmopolitan style in elegant and sophisticated manner. Subjects of their paintings usually depict popular legends and love stories with patterns like mille fleurs or thousand flowers showed influence which may have been due to the Crusades. Stained glass windows were created to transform the vast stone interiors with warm colors to instruct Christian in their faith. Sculptures had a greater freedom of style. They no longer lay closely against the wall, but begun to project outward. Figures were given their own particular attitudes instead of being set into particular patterns, but were more lively and realistic at the same time. Architectures from this period included two new devices such as pointed arch, which enabled builders to construct much higher ceiling vaults, and stone vaulting hauled on a network of stone ribs which were supported by piers and clustered pillars. These elements together formed a structurally and aesthetically integrated system or style which made the primary engineering innovation and design component of Gothic architecture.